You bet. So what I usually do is ask for questions and start there, if it's okay, because folks tend to have a fair amount of questions. But there's one thing, one kind of rule of the road that I always give before I start taking questions, and that's that if you have a personal issue, we wrote a story in 1998, it was about your sister, and you're upset with us about that, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. But most people don't really want to listen to back and forth about something extremely personal, if that's okay. All right. So does anybody have any questions to start us off? Yes, sir.
Yes. When the paper boy misses us, and I call in, I go through with the machine, and then it's 10 to 15 minutes before somebody comes on. Why is there such a delay? Sometimes I've waited 20 minutes to talk to a human.
That's a great question. So the question is, when you call in, if you have a delivery issue, why does it take so long? And the short answer is it shouldn't, but it does, because as part of a larger company, we now use a call center that is not here local. It is in Munster, Indiana. So, Herman Munster, there you go. Yeah, sometimes the call center's like that, probably so. And that's unfortunately the reason, sir, is depending on what activity is going on across the country, because they take calls from all over the country. So if there's a huge snowstorm in the Midwest and their call volumes go extremely high, then that can affect the wait times for people here locally. So, quite honestly, I think the company that I work for, Lee Enterprises, does a lot of great things. I think the call center could improve quite a bit. And that being said, they are launching actually some entirely new operations and some new software and phone systems to help to make that better. So I'm hoping personally that it gets a whole bunch better, because I think I agree with you, it's ridiculous that you have to wait that long.
And when you get older, your hand and arm gets tired after.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, it's just poor customer service, right? So let's call it is what it is.
Okay, thank you.
So I apologize for that.
All right.
I apologize. Yes?
A couple of questions. One, they do have a direct number you can find. You just got to work it. If you get that direct number, they will answer it. On that.
Thank you, because we will.
Yes, I know that. I found that out.
Yep.
Okay, second, we don't get papers on Monday. Our papers are thinner.
Correct.
And
Our prices went up.
Correct.
So,
Aren't you a lucky devil, right?
I see what you did. So are they ever thinking of going back to a Monday edition?
As it stands today, we are not looking at going back to a Monday edition. I can tell you at the same time, we are looking at adding some things you used to get back into other editions. So this is a challenge for us, and this is a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because I get asked this question quite a bit. So people say, hey, look, you took this from me, or you changed that. And the reality is our business is just like anyone else's, that we change to the marketplace. So when the market says, when you go into Walmart, they don't always carry the same stuff this week that they had a year ago, right? Things change. Well, things change for us too. In the Monday paper, really wasn't supported by advertising very well at all. And advertising pays for the paper to get to your door. So essentially, in our business, you're a subscriber and you pay a fee, but advertising subsidizes almost the whole thing. As subscribers, so when I pay my subscription, it doesn't pay for the subscription. It's just a small piece. And so when we looked at that and then looked at reader habits in terms of reading online, and I know for a lot of retired folks, they probably don't read as much online as they do in the paper or as much with their smartphone. But that's where the market has really gone. Now we have this huge other audience that we're trying to meet their needs as well. And so we're shifting with that market, with those market changes, to try and find the right balance for advertisers, subscribers, and for the right amount of cost. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of what's behind it.
You did okay.
All right, I appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
How's your advertising going online then?
How is the advertising going on? In other words, how's the revenue? Actually, very well. So the revenue here at the Daily News as it relates to digital advertising. So clients who pay us to advertise on the phone, when you use your phone to read the news, or on a desktop, or on your tablet, has actually been growing at an extremely fast rate.
It's surprising, I wouldn't have thought that the kids, and a lot of that is the majority of children, or, teenagers, young adults in the 20s.
Well, and it's interesting that you said it. I'm glad you said it. So her question is, boy, that's a lot of kids you're talking about, a lot of young folks in their 20s. I know that Marianne's, she's just barely out of her 20s. Exactly. But I can tell you, because I'm with her every day at work, that she uses her phone for just about everything.
I use mine a lot also.
And so while a lot of people think that the cell phone usage and reading the paper and getting news is just a whole bunch of young people, and there are, it's really not. It's a whole bunch of folks, whole bunch in general that go all the way up to retired people.
Yeah.
So, my father is 82. He lives up in Kirkland, and he gets his news from the Seattle Times in print, and then he goes and he gets it on the computer as well downstairs.
Interesting. I just didn't correlate it with the advertising part of it.
You bet. And the other thing is people are buying stuff through their phones.
True.
And they're buying things online from their desktop. This year's Christmas season saw some of the highest online sales, retail sales, I think ever. It made records. And so with advertisers understanding how to use it to make money, then they'll advertise on the medium as well. So we're seeing huge growth year over year over year, 30, 40% year over year gains every single year.
So I'd like to give you a praise.
Oh, well, thank you.
I use my Kindle a lot, and I check my email all the time on my Kindle.
Okay.
And I like when the Daily News gives me a blast of something new that's happening. Then eventually I'll go to my laptop and read the whole article.
Well, fantastic. We're glad it works. You're a great example for a digital user. So she was giving us a compliment because we send out email blasts and text blasts that say, hey, there's breaking news, the school's closed, or this thing happened, and then you get it in your email or on your phone, and then you can click through and read the story.
I do like that also. I do get it too.
Oh, good.
I use it a lot.
So, and it's another example of how much our business has changed. It used to be we had one deadline late in the evening, and you didn't hear anything from us that entire day. And then the next morning, you've got some news. Well, now you hear from us literally about 18 hours a day. And that's another aspect of our business that's changed a lot. We have to staff the newsroom 18 hours a day.
School closures, road closures, things.
Floods, right? Everything that happens now, people are using news all day long. Where the habits 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was a kid growing up in Bothell, right, north of Seattle, reading the PI. I read the PI in the morning, the sports page, that's all the news I got all day.
Yeah, but that was a great newspaper. I know a lot of people who felt bad when they went out of business.
I agree with you.
I'm one of them.
I'm one of them too. I grew up reading the PI, and I actually worked for the Seattle Times for years and years, and it was really sad to see them stop printing. Agreed. Yes, sir.
Well, to bring you down a little, your sports section is what I call mediocre.
Okay.
As far as what they've been in about sports. I know here lately now they started putting in big pictures to take up about a half of the page. So instead of having 2 pages of sports, you got a page, well, then they have sports. Then they have a picture on the other side. And sometimes down there where they have the scoreboard, where they'll have the same crap day after day after day. And I follow the Pac-12, and I haven't seen the standings once in there this year for basketball. And football, they had it in there about twice.
Okay. So
your sports page isn't cutting it for me.
all right, so the concern there, obviously the criticism, fair criticism, that hey, there should be more sports news in the sports page. And then let me talk about that for just a second, and I'll get right back to you, sir.
Adding to this, on the sports page, the print is so small that sometimes you can't read it.
Okay. So this is the fundamental challenge that we have all the time. all the time. What is going to go in tomorrow's paper? And each day, we get together at about 3:30 in the afternoon, a small group of us, and we sit down and we go over all the news that we've gathered off of all of our news beats. We look at what sports are going, and then we sit down and try and determine what's going to pack the paper that day. And it's a challenge, and there are days where we do fantastic, and there are days where we don't do as well. But when
I
it
must
comes,
have missed that day.
they must have missed that day. There you go. There you go. Hey, I feel that way sometimes myself. But when it comes to things like sports, and this is the challenge of having a product that is a mass product. We have content in each day to appeal to a wide variety of folks. Well, some of us, like me, I'm a sports junkie, probably someone like you, so I would love it if the sports page took up about 10 more pages. But the problem is that maybe she doesn't read any of it at all, and I
LCC would make me very happy.
there you go. So I've got to have enough content to please her as well, and it's a challenge. And so I'm with you. I love the old days of the PI reading 24 pages of sports. I used to read the little stuff. We call that agate, sports agate, all the scores. I used to tell my dad, "Oh, Dad, well, football game, the Buffalo Bills, they're going to lose because, OJ's injured." And he's like, "How do you know that?" And I'd say, "Well, it's in the sports page." I love that stuff. But on one hand, I apologize to you, and on the other hand, I hope you understand our challenge a little bit too.
Well, yeah, I think there should be more effort. The other thing I have, sometimes they try to fit a story into the space column. And you read the story, and by the time you get to the end, you think, what the hell are they talking about? They've chopped it up so much.
Well, that's another good question.
Little content is what he's
You're loving this, aren't you?
little content.
Yep. So that's another challenge that we have. So we're trying to bring you the most important stories we can find. And sometimes the story that we get, maybe it's from the Associated Press or it's from one of the other wires, and we look at what space we have left and say, this is the space we've got. We still want to get you that story, and so we've got to go ahead and edit it ourselves. And it's, I'm telling you, it's an amazing thing. I'm shocked every day when the paper shows up on my front porch because it's a heck of a process that involves so many things, and that's another one of our challenges. Yes, sir?
When I like is where it says continued on such and such a page, you can look on the page it's supposed to be on, and there ain't a damn thing to do with that article on the page.
Yeah.
That's his favorite thing too.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing too, believe me. If I had to make a joke, it's to get you to read tomorrow, right? No, but the reality is that's a mistake. That's a production mistake where we call it a jump. So the story starts on the front of a section and then it jumps
To where?
to another page. And what happens is the designer goes in and puts that story on the front page, probably gets interrupted or something else happens, some other problem comes up somewhere else, and then they forget to put the jump in.
Right, it jumped off the page.
It jumped off the page and it didn't jump back on somewhere else.
Well, I just have to comment, I stopped taking the Oregonian because their papers start getting pretty darn thin too, but I want to continue to be able to read about the local news, and that's very important to me. Whether it's businesses that are just starting out and current events going on with the schools, that's important to me too.
I agree with that. I would think if you're going to thicken anything in the paper besides sports for our gentlemen there, area news is something that's important for us around here.
And to your point, so what they essentially said is we love the local information, the local news. That's the stuff they're interested in most. So we do reader research. And over the past 25 years of my career, every single research study about what readers want always starts with the word local. The number one thing readers tell us they want every single time we do a study is local crime news. The number two thing is how to combat crime in my neighborhood, local. And then it's anything else you can imagine that starts with the word local. Local sports, local schools, local government, local this, local that. And so that's where we try and focus as much as we can. And some days, so for example, our front page each day. So we have a formula for the front page. We try and bring you 3 locals 3 local stories on the front page every day, and then the most important national story. There's some days when that doesn't happen, maybe because it's slower news, maybe because there's 2 national stories that deserve to go out front. It doesn't happen every single day, but that's our goal. When it comes to the sports page, I know you don't like the big photos, but those big photos, for example, earlier this week, it was of Brock Johnson from Castle Rock, and he's a local prep player who's scoring a lot of points on the basketball floor, and he's doing a great job, and folks love to see big pictures of local kids that they know. And so while you might not like that, it really is a feature that a whole bunch of folks really do enjoy.
Katie Hankins, LCC, just a little name to throw out.
There you go. There you go. Yes, sir.
Regarding your editorial page,
Okay.
how do you go about choosing your columnists? And do you choose that? And I just want to say I appreciate you have both liberal and conservative columnists. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for saying that. So the question is, how do you pick which national columnists will be on the editorial page? And we do it exactly the way you just said. And that's that we pick them based on, we want to have all sides. So Charles Krauthammer gives you much more of the conservative, Republican side. E.J. Dion gives you much more of sort of that liberal, progressive side. We have some who are in the middle. And so what we're trying to do is create discussion about all sorts of different issues. And so we're trying to present throughout the course of the week all of those different sides.
If I went to a lead paper in a different area, would the columnists be different? In other words, do you have input as far as choosing the columnists?
The columnists, so if he read a lead paper from, say, Billings, Montana, would they have the same columnists as we do? And the answer is no. We do choose those here. We have a contract. Basically, it's a wire, we call them wire contracts. And so we have a host of them that are offered to us, and we pick the ones we want. And each paper can make the deal with whatever wire service that they want for their national columnists.
Do any of ours write anywhere else?
Are there edited anywhere else across the country or anywhere? Yes, yes. People like Krauthammer are all across the country.
I have one more.
Yes, sir.
On the sports page, you have all the listings of all the leagues for high schools, except 1B. See, we're associated with Three Rivers Christian School, and they're in 1B, and they're not, that league isn't listed at all. Why?
I don't have a great answer for that other than we put all the league information we have. A lot of times we get asked about information, why don't you have it in there? Or why didn't you have information about that game yesterday or the wrestling match? And a lot of times for us, it's a function of we have a hard time getting it. And I don't know specifically on the 1B, okay, information. But when coaches don't call in games, when leagues won't provide us information, we end up, a lot of people get upset with us and they call me and they go, oh, you're just this terrible paper, this thing happened and, okay, well, we didn't get a call. Nobody,
You do the write-up about the game. It's not that, because the coach always calls that in, and you always are very good about supporting Three Rivers along with the other local schools. But it's in the standings down below. But the 1B standing, we don't know where our school stands with the rest of the teams they play.
Okay. And the best I can tell you at this point is I don't know exactly why we don't have that, but I can certainly tell you.
Thank you.
Question here.
Yes.
On your online edition,
Yeah.
your online edition, I can go on my computer at home, of course, pull up the whole newspaper. Yeah. But if I'm traveling, and I just go to my TDN app, it doesn't have as much information. So are you going to start providing more information on the TDN app?
The short answer is yes, and if you dig into your TDN app, there is a whole host of information there. You can also go to the mobile website and get just about everything. You can also electronically get what we call the e-replica edition, which is an exact replica of that day's printed paper, and get that on your computer.
On your tablet and things?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have an app for that?
We don't have an app for the e-replica edition.
I think about it.
And believe me, we just came out with a prep sports app. We're looking at real estate apps. We're looking at all sorts of apps right now because it gives us another opportunity to allow you to read and to disseminate the information.
Thank you.
You bet. Good question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wanted to say that, you know, on your sports news, you do a real good job on the local prep sports.
Thank you.
I think. And that was colleges and NFL and that kind of stuff, and you don't do as good a job. But your area news, I like that. I mean, between that, the area news and the prep, but if you didn't have that, if you didn't do a good job on that, I just wouldn't take the paper. Because I get the national news all the time. I'm not an internet person, so I get my news off either the TV or out of the paper.
Well, you made a great point, and thanks for the compliment. I appreciate that. And we know you can get your national news anywhere, and that's why we don't provide as much of it. Because it's not something that's exclusive to us. The local stuff is what's exclusive, that is our sort of enterprise advantage, right? I mean, you can get Pac-12 news from dozens of places. That doesn't give me any business advantage. What gives me a business advantage is I have somebody at the Castle Rock basketball game, or we're writing about the Three Rivers Christian game, and you can't get that anywhere else. And so that's part of the struggle that I was mentioning to you earlier. We have this business advantage of being local. We know that through the research that readers want local, and then I've got some space left over because I want to bring you some of that national and regional news, so what is it going to be? And so I'm a Pac-12 football guy. I grew up going to Husky Stadium as a kid. Watched Warren Moon, Joe Steele, all those guys. I mean, it's as good as it gets. And I miss the Husky football too, as well as the Husky basketball. And so I understand, I'm with you. But the challenge becomes, I'm running a business. And so you could say to me, well, hey, Parrish, just add another 16 pages. Right? Well, you know, that's 16 pages times tens of thousands of newspapers that, you know, and all of a sudden it gets pretty expensive fast. And then that ends up taking a bite out of my local resources again, right? So it's this push-pull, give and take that we don't always meet up your expectations on some of the non-local stuff. So I appreciate where you're coming from and know that we're trying as best we can. Yes, sir.
I just got one final question for me anyway.
Yeah.
Is your newspaper kind of like a training ground for reporters? Because I see reporters just seem to go in, go out, go in. They don't stay as long as they used to.
Yep. So the question is our newspaper a training ground for local reporters? And the short answer is yes. So we take a fair amount of younger reporters and we bring them in here, and they're enthusiastic, and we train them, and they do a great job. If you look at the staff we have now, yep, they're young ladies, and one veteran, Tom Paulo, and they're doing a fantastic job, and we're teaching them. And then all the other papers in the western half of the state, from the Seattle Times, Bellingham Herald, Columbian, you know, Oregonian, as soon as they have an opening, they call our building, and they're asking who's the best you got. And they use us as a farm club. And if you go to the Oregonian, they're going to get paid more than we pay them. And so as a young person who's 26 years old, if someone's calling you, offering you a new opportunity, higher up the food chain for more money, you know, start a family and everything else, you probably say, hey, that's not a bad deal. I'll just move down to Vancouver and call it a day. So we just had Brooks Johnson go to the Columbian. Brooks is just an outstanding young person. And we did everything we could to keep him over and above what, you know, yeah. And but there's life issues too. You know, these are a lot of young people. They want to be close to nightlife, or they want to be close to other family, or whatever it might be. And so we face those problems too.
Because I remember Melissa blocks all the time.
Good. Well, we appreciate that. I also want to let you know that we still have people like Nancy Edwards, who's been at the paper for almost 40 years. Andre's been at the paper for almost 40 years. Forever, yeah. I'll tell him that. He'll appreciate that. Tom Palu has been at the Daily News for over 35 years. We have a whole host of staff members like that, who are local folks who grew up here, or even though I'm always considered a non-local around here. I grew up in Western Washington. I've been through Longview my entire life. You know, there are folks, Mary Ann grew up here in Kelso. So we have a lot of staff who's been around a long time.
One other question, I'm sorry.
No, that's the idea. That's all you want.
You know, locally, do they do the proofreading? Because sometimes your paper is a little lacking in that.
Harder than it seems.
Well, first of all, I'm gonna, you know, just like I had some criticism over here earlier, and I agreed about the telephone center, I agree with you on this too. This is a challenge for us in the world of technology and how things are done. So a story gets written, and then it gets sent off and it's edited and it's all corrected. And then when it goes back on a page, it might not fit. So it's already been spell checked and everything, right? And then it gets put on a page and we got to cut a couple paragraphs out because it's just a little too long. So then someone goes in and starts editing it again, right? And by the time you go through multiple iterations of this on deadline, someone might run in at the last minute and make yet another change, and then they spelled 3 words wrong, or whatever. And then I get a phone call the next morning and say, Parrish, do you guys still use spell check? And it's like, well, of course we do. Of course we use spell check. But in the process, to fit the whole package together, oftentimes you run into this. And we went to an entire new system last April, and I'm kind of a heavy critic of that system. There are some things, you know, a local publisher, you know, what news we cover is my responsibility, my direction. You know, selling the ads, my responsibility, my direction. Delivering the paper. I do not run the phone centers. So when I call them up, you know, I'm not their boss. And so we have a new process for this that wasn't my decision either. And I don't think it's near as good, and it needs to improve, and I'm working through the proper channels to do that. But until then, we're going to continue to probably struggle a little bit.
Thank you.
But I do appreciate your patience.
In your defense, I printed this and I changed one word and it changed my sentence and it changed the spelling and it deleted something. And just this little bit, it's all it takes. You've got to give them credit for their spell checking and their...
Well, I appreciate that. And
because it doesn't take much to make something go wrong in a printing of something or in spell checking or nothing.
I tell people one other thing.
It's so easy.
When you put forth the sheer volume of words and material that we do every day, you're going to have mistakes. It's just, there's no way you can't.
It's impossible to not have it.
And I think our challenge is to minimize those that we have, and we need to do a better job of that. And so it's also a function, too, of us trying to provide you as much value as possible. So I'll give you a great example in sports. Last week, we had a game ran late, so that pushed our deadline back about 10 minutes. And then one reporter had some trouble on a sports story, so that pushed the deadline back another 15 minutes. Now I'm 25 minutes late. Remember, I got to print these papers, package them, and ship them all the way to the coast. We deliver geographically a 2-hour radius from our building, okay? So we're going hundreds of miles, right? So then on top of it, we had some sports agate, some of that detail that they were having trouble with formatting, and they decided they had to get it in. That pushed us 35 minutes late. Okay, so what happens to your proofreading when you're already 35 minutes late? Do you take your time, or do you go even faster? You go faster.
You can skip over a word so many times.
Hey, skip over. So, you know, here in our zest and our zeal to give you the best possible product, we push everything farther than we should. We make deliveries 20 or 30 minutes late, which, you know, you're calling the call center because you don't have the paper, and then we end up screwing it up because we didn't have time to proof it. And so sometimes we're our own worst enemy trying to do the best possible job.
Easily.
No more questions? That's it? Yes, ma'am.
I see you haven't changed your weather service. This morning they said our low yesterday was 12.
It didn't feel that cold to you?
I read it. I read the weather, you know, because I have relatives in different parts of the country and things. I know you can get the weather off of us, everything else, but I always read the high and low for the nation, but it just tickles me how where do they get our...
So the weather, let's step back a little bit. So we don't have somebody on staff who sits out there, right, and says, well, the wind's southeast about 5 miles an hour, because that just doesn't make sense for our business. So for a lot of things, and I'll go back to the columnist that you mentioned on the editorial page, we sign a contract with someone who provides us those options and information. So when it comes to weather, we also have a contract with somebody, and we download all that information and it automatically formats on the page, right? Because quite honestly, that's the simple and most effective way for us to do it, and 9.9 times out of 10 give you fairly accurate weather. Now, you're talking to the guy who, I always kind of laugh at the weather people because they say, I love your job because you can't even figure out what's going to happen tomorrow, right? But everybody seems to be okay with that. You talk about people with errors, right? I mean, holy smokes. And so that's a challenge that we have is in automated processes when it comes to proofreading, is it's all automated, so you're not looking at it, right? And it's right 363 days a year, but there's a couple days where it's 12, right? Because someone in Wyoming, where we get the information from, put in 12 instead of 32, or 12 instead of 42. And so that's another one of the challenges of the modern production processes. I mean, all these computers are great, but they create other problems for you that necessarily people don't see or understand. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir?
Would it not be better to put down yesterday's temperatures instead of predicting what it's going to be today?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it comes back to what I've been talking about with sports, is what do people want to read? Yesterday that they already know about, or tomorrow that they're making plans for? Right? So we always say, hey, look, people want to read our paper and find out what's going on this weekend, so as they're making plans, they might want to go to the Columbia Theater, they might want to take a class, they might want to go to the RA Long Class of 59 luncheons, right? They want and knowing about that yesterday, it happened yesterday, I always say to the newsroom when they ask me, hey, can I write a story about this? I'll say, who cares? Who cares? If we can't say who's going to care, then we shouldn't waste our time writing it. And stuff that happened yesterday, people will typically say, I'm not sure I care about that. And so it's a great question, and what you're hitting on is some of the things that we struggle with all the time. And I typically will ask this question of groups. Maybe I'll do this right now. Who can tell me what the definition of news is? Okay, so we have someone, so she says news is something of interest to someone. So yesterday's weather might be interesting to that fellow. Is that news?
It's news to him.
Okay, might be news to this gentleman. What else is news? Someone, please tell me, you've all read the paper for 40 years, right? What's happening? What's happening, okay, so this gentleman just walked out the door, that happened. Yeah. Is that news? It is to him, but are you going to be able to sell that to 20,000 homes?
No.
No, nobody cares about me walking out the door, do they?
Something exciting.
Something exciting. Okay, so when a plane lands, that's pretty exciting, isn't it?
No.
Big 747, hands, all that noise, that's exciting, right?
Crash. If it lands.
If it crashes, okay, so something that's out of the norm might be news. Yes, sir?
Something that may be interesting to a number of the readers of that.
Like the Pac-12 scores, right?
Well,
exactly. You're exactly right. I'm having fun with you, but you're exactly right. It's something that's of interest to a larger group, something that's out of the ordinary, something that impacts your life. Hey, Fiber Federal got robbed, right? If you saw that, you would read it. Because a lot of you have your money there, right? Okay? So, but at the same time, there are other things that are on the edge of, is that news? Is yesterday's weather, right? Well,
Been there, done that.
well, but it's still, this gentleman's going to say, hey, that's news, that's interesting stuff.
You don't care about what Vern says.
Well, Vern, but it becomes a challenge as you get into a mass media publication that's designed to reach a lot of folks and interest a lot of folks. So, if you look at the people here who are mostly retirees, you probably have a wide, broad range of interests, right? In just this group of 30 folks. So, Vern, you got an NRA hat on, okay? You're talking to a guy who loves the NRA. I love to hunt, got my guns, love that stuff. There's probably a whole group of people here who couldn't care less about us and our NRA.
Don't vote for Hillary then.
What's that?
Don't vote for Hillary.
Okay, so obviously for you, some information about Hillary or Ted Cruz might be important. But, it serves to give you an example of the different interests people have and the challenges of figuring out not just sports news, sir, but all kinds of news. Political.
Personal.
And then how often do you have it on the cover? I can tell you, I thought that when Barack Obama first was campaigning for president, we had something on him on the front page, it seemed like every day. And when I look back at that coverage, I don't think it deserved to be on there.
Yeah, you can't figure out why.
Now it should be in the obituary. Oh, did I
Well-
say that? You were supposed to be good today.
But there's interest there, right? It was huge news, but should it be there every day? Is it front page space every day? And so we have these conversations all the time. So we're talking about that right now with Trump. Should Trump be on the front page every day? No, I don't think so. I don't think so, whether you can vote for him or not, right? So, how to play the news and what's news, it changes and it shifts. And sometimes when the plane crashes, it's not stuff that we want to have on the front page, but it's such big news, it needs to be there. And we take criticism for all that. Hey, Parrish, boy, it's the old thing, oh, well, if it bleeds, it leads. You put all that terrible news on the...
And sometimes you can't please all the people.
Well, yeah, we don't please all the people any day of the week, right? Because every story that you read, there's someone on the other side who's not too happy with that. But when it impacts your life, or when it's dramatically out of the norm, you're typically going to find that we give it more attention. So, yes, sir?
Why did you put Lyle Lovingfloss back in the comics? Why does he get front page pictured?
So the question was, why don't we put news about Phil Lovingfloss in the comics? Yeah, so that's a great question. So let me answer it this way. What the digital editions, so the website, the mobile phone, and all this have done for the media, is when we write a story now, we can see exactly how popular it is. Because we track in real time all of the electronic digital editions and all of the folks who are online reading. So we have a big TV in the newsroom, and I could take you in the newsroom, turn on the TV, and it'll show you everything everybody is reading in real time. And we know from history, because Mr. Lovingfloss has been in the paper quite a few times, we know that it is one of the most highly read subjects we have. So if we put him back in the cartoons, as much as I appreciate your humor, everybody would be furious because, believe me, it's front page news.
Wow.
Yes, yes. And it's another way every single day that we gauge whether the stuff we write passes the who cares test.
That doesn't say
Well,
much.
I'm sorry to get off track, but I believe that the Daily News is unique also because of the area news section, and then the other section where you post the community events, like for the different meetings, and I don't know what other newspapers do if they go that far, but I like to be able to read what other organizations are doing, when they're meeting, and etc.
Well, thank you for that.
Self-help.
So she talks about, do other newspapers do all the community events and publish all those that we do? Not all of them do. We think it's critically important. And that falls under the local news and information. I often talk to reporters and I say, look, our paper each day has to provide the maximum value. That's our goal, maximum reader value every day. And some folks might think the latest city council story is cool, but the reality is the most read thing in the paper outside of the front page is the obituaries. Okay? And if you think about it from a human element, I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, people want to see what's happening to their friends and their loved ones and their grandpa or their cousin or their friend's relative, their neighbors. right? That's huge. That is coworkers. That is huge. And so the obituaries are some of the most important information that we carry. As is the, I'll use the RLM class of 59 luncheon example again. Because if you're associated with RLM in any way, my son goes to RLM, right? I read that. Oh, look at that, someday my kid's going to be able to go to the RLM class of 2018 lunch, right? And that's pretty darn cool. It is. And so what I try and explain to the reporters is, don't get so hung up that you're so important and your story is the be-all, end-all in the world, because it's going to line the birdcage tomorrow, right? And we got to go out and provide more value tomorrow. And what is that? And let's focus on that, right? So you get the maximum each day. Yes, sir.
One thing that I got to complain about that irritates me every time it happens is this is 1/3 of the page fold over for advertising that you do. I hate that. It just makes me mad. I don't even read. I just rip it off. And
So he's the gentleman's upset, sir. He's upset because we sell what we call in our business, we call it a stadia, and it's a full page and then 1/3 of the page that wraps around the front of the paper.
right.
And it covers up some of the
Absolutely.
news on the main page. So let me put you on the spot, sir. What upsets you about that? I mean, why?
Well, I guess blocking the what's on the main page. It just irritates me. It's just a waste of my time and your time to put that in the paper.
But it gets your attention.
Well, I don't read it.
No, but you see it.
Okay, so that's a great example. So our advertisers buy this space for exactly the reason you're upset with it. You have to see it, you have to grab it, you have to pull it off. And it's one of the most popular things we sell, and it's one of the most expensive things we sell.
Oh my God.
Because it gets so much, the retailers who are on it get such a great return on their investment.
Whether it's negative or positive?
No, return.
Positive.
People are buying stuff.
Positive.
Yeah, positive return on investment. So I apologize that bothers you. Believe me, I have taken a fair amount of heat over the pot leaves on the front of the paper, right? You've all seen those before?
That's where I was going. Why are they covering something up? Why don't you just leave a place blank so they can put that sticker on the...
Because our machines can't put it in a blank spot. It's not that type of manufacturing.
Put it in the spot.
You can put it in a spot, okay.
I would peel it up and put it on the back of the...
But it's another example of an advertisement that is really front and center, that really gives that client a chance to get their message to you for sure, and the returns that people get. Let me tell you a story about these stickers on the front. So I used to work at the Idaho Statesman in Boise, Idaho. And we went to Albertson's headquarters, and I was sitting across from this big hoo-ha regional marketing guy. And I said, look, you've got to do one of these sticky notes, is what we call them, one of these sticky notes on the front of the paper. And he looks at me and he says, no, I'm not doing that. That doesn't work. Doesn't work. And I go, I tell you what, I give you a deal on this sticky note if you try it. And if it works, you'll buy a whole bunch of it. Right? But I said, you got to put a good offer on this thing. You can't put a terrible offer. We need an offer that people want to get up and they're going to go to Albertsons to get something. He says, you know what? I am so confident that I'm right, that this thing isn't going to work. I'll put 2 free ears of corn on this thing for anybody who brings it in. And I knew I had it, right? So I said, perfect, let's do it. I get this call at 7:45 in the morning at home. You got to get those things off, we're out of corn. In 19 Albertsons stores in Boise, Idaho. Gone. No corn for anybody. It was fantastic.
It worked.
Yes, sir.
Looking 10 years down the pike or whatever, do you see more of your revenue coming from the electronic side? And what about the print side? Is that going to disappear?
So the question is, if you look 10 years down the line, what's it going to look like for media companies? There you go. The nice lady says it'll be this wide. Right? So
Pocket size.
it's already this wide. It's called your smartphone. Yeah. So the reality is that it's going to change as the demographics change. But there's one thing I try to explain to people. So folks will say, well, young people don't read the paper. And first of all, it isn't true. All our studies show that we reach a significant amount of young people because they like to read stuff like prep sports. Like I told you, I have a 16-year-old son. He's on TDN all the time. If he has it on his phone, clicks the app, and he'll lean over and he'll say, "Dad, why did that happen?" And I'll go, "What?" And he'll say, "Well, it's on your site. You should know." And I'll say, "Okay, here's what happened." But you'll see that print, it will find a sort of a balancing spot, as will digital as it relates to mobile phones and desktop website. Right now, about 35% of our audience is on the phones and on the desktop. So it's a huge audience. Okay, and as we do things like an app, so that you can read the paper in different ways and access the information in different ways, you'll see that probably spread out some more. And so our future is going to be delivering news and information to you across a wide range of products. And as those products evolve, we're going to have to evolve with it. The other thing that's going to happen, and it isn't necessarily great news for you or for me as a subscriber, but the advertisers, the Walmarts of the world, the Safeways, they've been paying to have your paper delivered to you. They pay for you to have that, right? Because their money is what subsidizes the subscription, because a subscription doesn't pay enough nearly to get the paper to your door. And as they shrink their investment, right, as those large companies advertise less and less, we're going to have to find ways to provide more and more value to you so that we can get more money from subscribers, so to balance it up. It used to be almost 90% of all our revenue was from advertisers. So what we paid as subscribers was only about 10%. And that number has changed. Now it's more of an 80-20, 75-25 now. So, you know, I tell people, I say, look, we need to become more like AAA in some ways. Right? Does anybody have AAA in here? Yep, I got AAA. So AAA has about 1.1 million subscribers in the state of Washington. Right? So that's almost 25% of all households. And what do you get when you buy AAA? Anyone who has AAA again? What do you get, sir?
Service.
Service. What sort of service?
If the car breaks down, or get a flat tire, they'll come out.
Okay, and what happens if your car doesn't break down and you don't get a flat tire? What do you get?
You get discounts,
You get discounts. On what?
all kinds of things.
All kinds of things. And that is value,
You
is
also
what it
get
is.
security.
You get security. Well, most people, I can tell you, don't use their flat tire emergency roadside assistance. They use the discounts. But they buy the roadside assistance. And when you get the discounts, you can now get discounts from everything: life insurance, travel, cell phone, credit card, dozens of things.
Dozens of things. Museums, all kinds of stuff.
Museums. And the reason that you go through AAA is, who knows, who's ever heard of AAA? Has anyone not heard of AAA? Does anyone not trust AAA? Do y'all trust AAA? Because you trust them, right? I mean, my father won't go anywhere that isn't AAA approved.
Reputation.
Right? I mean, we go to a restaurant, Dad, we're going to go eat. Oh, is that AAA? Okay, Dad. Yeah, it's AAA. Right?
But you earn that reputation.
But you're in that reputation. So, do you think most people in town have heard of the Daily News? You would hope so.
Good or bad?
Good or bad. You might not agree with everything we write, but you know, we're right over here on 11, and you know, you can walk in and talk to us, right?
Correct.
So there's a brand, and there's some trust, and there's some loyalty, and it's a brand that pretty much everybody knows. And we need to find ways to bring you more value, whether it be through discounts or all sorts of things, so that when you buy the paper, you go, hey, I don't mind paying more because I'm getting so much more. And it's got to be more than just more news. It's got to be more value of all different types.
Well, I want to go to Applebee's today for lunch, so if you discount, that's fine.
There you go. If I pay for your Applebee's, you'll appreciate
No,
that.
no, you don't have to pay for it, just it's fine.
Yep. So I think that's where it's going in the next 10 years, across a whole wide range of devices.
Cool.
And more value is what we need. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, I don't use your internet apps, so I just read the paper. And where do you derive your revenue from then on the internet? Do you have ads on there then?
So the question is, where do we get revenue from as it relates to the digital editions on the phone, on the desktop, and we sell ads on all of those different platforms and get money from those.
So do you derive more revenue from your internet or from your ads in paper?
right now, we derive more from the ads in the paper. And we've been selling those ads in the paper for over 100 years. And we've been selling these ads online for not too long. And believe me, the internet side is catching up fast. Good question. Is there anything else? Is there anything else anyone wants to know about the paper or what we do or anything?
Well, you can do one thing for me.
Sure.
I have a letter I was going to take for the editor.
Okay.
Great.
Well, for those of you who don't know, I've met Rick before. He's been in our editorial board session, so I appreciate that. I will bring that back to the office with me. Can I have one last word before I'm done?
Go ahead.
Would that be okay? I want to go back to the start and say, number one, thank you so much for letting me come here today. I really appreciate it. It's always good to talk to folks. The relationship people have with the newspaper in this community is just a very engaged and amazing one. And I personally really appreciate that. It's absolutely an honor and a privilege to be the publisher of the paper. It's something that is just very near and dear, and I'm very thankful and lucky to have that role, because I know it affects what each of you read every single day. And I just appreciate the chance to be here. So thanks so much. And if you have a question, if you have, hey, I don't like this, I do like that, my email address and my phone number is on the second page of the paper at the bottom. And when you call that number, that's my number, and I pick up the phone. So if you want to give me a buzz, you're welcome to, okay? Thank you.